For most of my married life, the world measured work by paychecks and promotions. By that standard, I was invisible. But every morning, long before the alarm clock ever rang, I was already awake, moving quietly through a house that depended on me more than it ever admitted. I learned early how to be silent without disappearing. I cooked meals that matched everyone's preferences, ironed shirts until the creases were perfect, remembered birthdays, deadlines, school projects, and doctor appointments. I balanced household budget. It's the way some people balance company accounts, stretching one income to cover many dreams. When our children cried at night, it was my arms that calmed them. When my husband worried about his business, it was my voice that reassured him. Once, before marriage, I had ambitions of my own. I had studied hard, earned a degree, and imagined a life where my skills would matter beyond the walls of a home. But when he proposed, he spoke gently and confidently, promising stability and partnership. "You don't need to work," he said. "Focus on the family. I'll take care of everything." His words sounded like love then. I didn't know they would one day be used as a weapon. At first, I felt proud of our arrangement. His success felt like our success. I helped where I could, organizing paperwork, responding to emails when he traveled, welcoming clients into our home with warmth and professionalism. He used to thank me. He used to ask my opinion. I believed we were a team, but time has a quiet way of changing people. As the business grew, so did his distance. He stopped explaining his plans to me, stopped asking for advice. Conversations turned into instructions and appreciation into expectation. My work became assumed, automatic like electricity, only noticeable when something went wrong. I remember one evening when he came home late, annoyed that dinner wasn't ready exactly when he wanted. I had spent the day taking our child to the doctor, managing bills, and helping with schoolwork. When I tried to explain, he waved me off. "You're home all day," he said. "How hard can it be?" That was the first time I felt truly unseen. Years passed that way. I grew quieter, more careful. I learned to swallow my feelings because expressing them only seemed to irritate him. When I asked for small things, help, acknowledgement, respect, he reminded me that he was the one earning money. The message was clear. Without a salary, my effort had no value. The betrayal didn't arrive suddenly. It crept in slowly, disguised as indifference, missed anniversaries, long phone calls he took outside, a smile that no longer reached his eyes when he looked at me. By the time I realized our marriage was breaking, it had already shattered. When he finally said the word divorce, his voice was calm, almost relieved. I felt no shock, only a deep, aching exhaustion. I had given everything quietly, faithfully, without ever keeping score. And now I understood how easy it was for him to forget. That night, after everyone slept, I sat alone in the living room. I looked at my hands, the same hands that had built a home, raised children, and supported a man's success. They were steady, strong, capable. I realized then that silence does not mean weakness. It means endurance. I didn't know yet that the world would soon demand proof of my worth. I didn't know that my husband would one day stand in a courtroom and erase my life's work with a single sentence. But deep inside, something had already shifted. I was done disappearing. The courtroom felt colder than I expected. Not because of the air conditioning, but because of the way people looked at me, as if I were already defined by the file in front of the judge. A woman asking for her share, a wife who didn't earn. I sat on the wooden bench, spine straight, hands folded in my lap, reminding myself to breathe slowly. Across the room, my husband looked completely at ease. He wore the same confident expression he used in business meetings, the one that said he belonged in rooms like this. His lawyer whispered something to him, and he nodded, smiling faintly, as if the outcome had already been decided. To him, this was a transaction, a calculation, not the end of a life built together. When the judge entered, everyone stood. The sound of chairs scraping echoed sharply, then silence fell. The proceedings began with formal questions, names, dates, length of marriage. 15 years reduced to numbers and legal language, I answered softly when addressed. My husband answered quickly, firmly, his voice carrying authority. Then the judge asked the question that shifted everything. "Let us discuss contributions to the marriage," she said, adjusting her glasses. "Both financial and non-financial." My husband's lawyer gestured toward him. He cleared his throat, leaned forward slightly, and spoke with casual certainty. "She's never worked." The words landed like a slap. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Someone behind me let out a small laugh. I felt heat rush to my face, but I kept my eyes forward. I refused to flinch. He continued, emboldened by the reaction. "She stayed home. I paid for everything: the house, the children, her lifestyle. She has no income, no professional history, and no financial contribution." Each sentence erased another year of my life. I glanced at the judge. Her expression was unreadable. She listened without interrupting, pen moving slowly across her notepad. When my husband finished, he leaned back, arms crossing loosely, like a man confident he had just spoken an undeniable truth. The judge turned to me. "Mrs.," she said evenly, "do you wish to respond?" For a moment, I couldn't hear anything but my own heartbeat. I thought of all the nights I stayed awake balancing accounts, the days I postponed my own dreams to support his, the years I worked without a title, without pay, without recognition. I stood. "Yes, Your Honor," I said quietly. My husband smirked, as if amused by my courage. He believed I had nothing, no proof, no credibility. In his mind, silence had always meant surrender. The judge leaned forward slightly. "Your husband claims you have never worked. Do you have evidence to the contrary?" I met her eyes. Yes, the word was simple, but it changed the room. My husband's smile faltered, just slightly, but enough. His lawyer shifted in his seat. For the first time since we entered the courtroom, my husband looked at me. Not through me, but at me. "Evidence," the judge repeated. "Yes, Your Honor." I said again, steadier now. "I have documentation." The judge nodded once. "Very well, we will review it." My husband let out a short, uneasy laugh. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, not quite under his breath. "She doesn't even have a job." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. As the clerk approached to collect the file from my hands, I felt an unexpected calm settle over me. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about anger. It was about truth. For years, I had carried my work in silence because love demanded it. Now, the law demanded proof, and I was ready to give it. I sat back down, hands still, eyes forward. Across the room, my husband's foot tapped nervously against the floor. And for the first time, he wasn't in control. The clerk carried my file to the judge with careful hands, as if she could sense its weight went far beyond paper. The courtroom grew so quiet I could hear the faint hum of the lights above us. My husband shifted in his chair, adjusting his tie for the third time in a minute. He avoided looking at me now. The judge opened the file slowly. Page after page turned, each one revealing a piece of a life that had been dismissed with a single sentence. Bank statements showed regular transactions, payments made, accounts balanced, debts cleared. There were spreadsheets neatly organized, dates highlighted, figures calculated with precision. I recognized my own work instantly. Late nights at the dining table, calculations done while everyone slept. The judge paused. "These accounts," she said, looking up, "were managed by you." "Yes, Your Honor," I replied. For over a decade, my husband's lawyer cleared his throat. "Objection. Managing household finances does not constitute employment." The judge raised a hand, silencing him. "I will decide what constitutes work." She continued reading. Emails followed. Professional, articulate correspondence with suppliers, clients, and partners. My name appeared again and again in signatures, sometimes under my husband's instruction, sometimes because he simply handed me the responsibility without a second thought. I remembered those moments clearly, him saying, "Just handle it, you're better at this." The judge looked directly at him. "Mister, were you aware your wife was communicating on your behalf in business matters?" His mouth opened, then closed. "Yes," he said finally, "but that was informal. She wasn't employed." The judge nodded once, unimpressed. Then came the business registrations. One document in particular made her eyebrows rise. "This side enterprise," she said, tapping the page, "is registered under your wife's name." A flicker of panic crossed my husband's face. Sweat dotted his forehead. His confident posture collapsed inward, shoulders tense, hands clenched together. "Yes," I said softly. "I started it while managing our household. The profits were reinvested into our family expenses and at times into his main business." The courtroom stirred. A witness was called, his former business partner, a man who once shook my husband's hand and thanked me behind his back. She did the real work. The man testified. We all knew it. If there was a problem, we called her. My husband stared straight ahead now, jaw tight. His foot no longer tapped, it trembled. The judge leaned back in her chair. "For 15 years. She said, "You presented yourself as the sole provider while benefiting from unpaid labor and concealed assets." My husband's lawyer attempted to speak, but the judge cut him off. "This court recognizes both financial contribution and invisible labor," she continued. "What you labeled as never worked was, in fact, sustained, skilled effort." My husband finally looked at me then, not with anger, not with arrogance, with fear. I felt no triumph, only a strange sense of release. I had carried this truth alone for so long that sharing it felt like setting down a heavy burden. The judge closed the file. "We will recess briefly before issuing a decision," she said. As everyone stood, my husband remained seated for a moment longer, hands shaking openly now. The man who once controlled every narrative had lost his voice. I walked out of the courtroom with steady steps. For the first time in years, my work was no longer invisible. And the truth, once spoken, could not be taken back. When the judge returned to the courtroom, the air felt different, heavier, yet clearer, as though the truth had settled into every corner of the room. Everyone stood again, but this time I noticed my husband hesitate before rising. His confidence was gone, replaced by a stiffness that betrayed how deeply the ground beneath him had shifted. The judge's voice was calm, firm, and unmistakably final. "This court recognizes the full scope of contribution within a marriage," she began. "Work does not exist only where salaries are paid. It exists where effort, skill, and responsibility are consistently given." She looked directly at my husband. "For years, you benefited from your wife's unpaid labor, administrative expertise, and financial management. To deny that now is not only inaccurate, it is misleading." My husband's face drained of color. He stared at the table, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles turned white. The ruling followed measured and precise, a fair division of assets, recognition of my role in building the business. Financial security that reflected years of unacknowledged work. The words flowed over me like a quiet tide, not dramatic, not vengeful, just. I felt something unexpected then, peace, not the sharp satisfaction of revenge, but the gentle relief of being believed. When the judge finished, she added one final sentence, her tone softer but no less powerful. "Respect within a marriage cannot be erased simply because it was never documented." The gavel came down. It was over. My husband didn't look at me. He gathered his papers with shaking hands, no longer the man who once spoke over me, dismissed me, or reduced my life to a sentence. He looked smaller now, not punished, just exposed. As I walked out of the courtroom, sunlight streamed through the tall windows, warming my face. I paused for a moment on the steps outside, breathing deeply, letting the air fill my lungs. The world hadn't changed, but I had. For years, I thought strength meant endurance, staying quiet, holding everything together without complaint. Now I understood that strength could also mean standing up and telling the truth, even when your voice trembles. People passed me on the steps, lawyers, families, strangers. None of them knew my story, and yet, for the first time, I didn't feel invisible among them. I thought about my children, about the example I wanted to set. That dignity doesn't require permission. That work doesn't need applause to be real. That silence can be broken. I didn't hate my husband. Hate would have meant he still had power over me. What I felt instead was closure, a quiet, settled ending to a chapter that had defined me for too long. Sweet revenge, I realized, isn't about watching someone fall. It's about standing tall after being pushed down. As I walked away, my steps were light, unburdened by years of unspoken sacrifice. I wasn't walking toward anger or bitterness. I was walking toward myself,